All right, so what I'm going to show you is quilts that I have been collecting for probably, I don't know, 15 years, once I could have started to afford to buy them. And this is what I spend my money on. Like, I'm not going to quilt shops and buying kits and patterns and doing all that stuff that I used to do. So now, this is what I do. And I invest in these quilts for a couple reasons. One is for the fabrics, and two is to maybe recreate some of them or to get some really good ideas, because my heart is very much with the people who came before us and kept this going and made this high-end art, or, you know, utilitarian, some of them are utilitarian, with thread, scissors, white or black thread, actually, right? They pretty much didn't have every color like we have. They don't have all the abundance of what we have today. So I try to honor them by showing their quilts, by buying their quilts, by redoing their quilts, and just educating people as to what was out there and done in the past, right? Because we need to honor them for doing this with so little, right? And creating these beautiful, beautiful quilts. Now, I don't know everything about these quilts. These quilts I have bought with, from antique dealers, eBay, Facebook auctions now. But you always take a risk when you buy without seeing it first, because everything looks different on photograph or in video or on a live stream. So sometimes you get surprised. Just take that chance, right? So please ask some questions if you have them. That's what makes this a little bit more interesting. If you ask some questions, then me just like, here you go, here you go. All right, so this one is probably one of the most expensive quilts. Like, it's up there probably in the top 10 most expensive quilts that I own. I am guessing late 1880s, somewhere around that type. Sometimes one of the people that I buy from, is that a tag right there on that? So sometimes they will put a little bit information on these quilts that said it came out of Connecticut, I believe, right? And what is the date on it? 1860. So I was a little off there. But who knows, right? It could be Connecticut estate. So this has like no damage done, or a little bit damage done to the red, the turkey, the matters. Those dyes were very acidic, and that's why you'll see that little bit of breakout. It looks like where there was green in this red print. But if you don't get like right up to it, you can't even really tell that that is gone on most of these. So I want to just pull it up here to show you this. But isn't this a great basket? And to do it 9 times beautifully is awesome. And this little chrome piece shows up in each one of the little flower centers there as well. And it is only 4 fabrics. So it's the same green, the same red, the background, and then the chrome yellow. And there is a little bit, sometimes you'll see in some of these quilts coming up that this green sometimes fades to a blue. It has a blue cast to it. Greens were very unstable back then, and you'll see some like water damage on some of these. So we're just going to flop them down here and roll them off like that. Okay? All right, so next up we have the pomegranate quilt. Again, what do you got on that? Anything good?
Unless it's in here.
Yeah, here, let me see. All right, so this is obviously applique, and then the triangle. See, they weren't afraid of triangles. All right, I got to get us not to be afraid of triangles. I stole this quilt. I only paid $245 for this quilt. And no, this is wrong. This is not a monkey wrench red and white. So this doesn't belong to this one. I'll put that over here. I know which one that is. All right, so this is just a beautiful applique with the sawtooth stars. So I'm assuming the sawtooth stars went on this block, and then the applique block there is executed by itself. They didn't put this around the block. All right, and what did they do back in the day when they were trying to figure out how to put this border on, and if it didn't quite fit, if they weren't that great at math, what they do, they just cut it off. And we still love it. All right, so one of the things you're gonna see in antique quilts is they made do. They ran out of fabric. They just finished it however they needed to do it. They used 2 different greens. Right, at one time this was probably the same color, but then when through time, this was dyed obviously at a different time, and that's why you see that different coloration, or possibly the sun got at it, but I don't think so. See how you see some blue in here? So that means that it was an unstable dye back in the day. And what's really cool about this one here as well is if you want to see some tiny, tiny, tiny cross stitch, CCM, the tiniest little bird ever, 1854. All right, so how cool is that? That we are still looking at these beautiful quilts today, over 100 and however many, somebody do the math.
169 years.
169 years. So I hope I can't even say this is a woman, you don't even really know that. All right, but I hope they're up in heaven saying, oh my God, look at, they're showing my quilt. All right. So even though we don't know who CCM is, it's just cool that she had that to put that date on there for us to know exactly how this is, because how do you date a quilt that is all solid fabrics? We don't know, but now we know this one is from 1854. Isn't that cool? Do I ever wash them? If they come stinky, yes, I'm not afraid to wash them. But, most of the time, like I said to Darcy and I were like, yeah, I would really love to give this one a bath. You just take a risk, but in the bathtub is a really safe place to do it. If you're worried about it, don't throw it in your washing machine. Give it a hand bath. Then, lay some clean sheets out on your floor and let it dry naturally out on the floor if you're worried about that. You just got to be careful. I don't want to say you can't wash them, but you just got to do it very carefully and read up on how to do it, stuff like that. Now, look at this beauty, all right? Those are little circles, needle turned, all right? And look at, she did little pyramids on the bottom. This design, I have borrowed this border. I think I just saw somebody sewing it. Where is she?
Oh, she's
Melinda. Do you have your quilt right now that you're working on, your stitchery? Yeah. I believe that your quilt you're working on, I borrowed this border. All right, so see how I'll take this and then I'll add my own little spin to it. You see that? So that's how I use these and honor this cute little design here. I believe it is similar to this one, right? It has 3 flowers and yeah. Okay, you see that's how this works. That's how I use these as a designer. Yes, I designed it. Yes, I put that together, but I borrowed from the past. You know what they say? Steal like an artist. It's okay. It's okay to borrow these things. And like I said, to honor them. I just don't say, yeah, this is my design. No, I borrowed it from an antique quilt of mine. Okay. Again, sweet, simple, beautiful scallops, beautiful quilting in this one. A little bit coarser fabric. It feels almost like a feed sack fabric. It's not a regular muslin, but again, you can see some of the blue coming through on this fabric. It might be part of the fabric that it's blue in there, but it doesn't.
It's like it's an older quilt that you're still using, and the binding starts to. How do you try to repair, put like another binding on it?
All right, that's up to you. How bad is it? Is it bad that it's gonna compromise the quilt or whatever? There's nothing wrong with replacing a binding on an old quilt, but what you're gonna do is you're gonna make it circa 2023. All right, just knowing that, if that bothers you, I'd rather, I mean, if you're going to use a quilt and wash it, I'd rather have it intact. And it's okay. It's okay to keep that quilt viable and usable and lovable, but it's all up to you what you want to do. You own the quilt, right? So I know there's a lot of, you know, flack about you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that and you got to do this and you got to do that. It's your quilt. You do what you want with it. Right? But I just try to honor it the best I can. When you have a textile like this, you do your best to preserve it or to, you know, use it, show it, whatever. If you take one of our tours here and you get to go to my studio and you see all the quilt tops that I buy as well that never make it into a quilt, there's reasons why they haven't made it into a quilt, right? Could be, you know, 26 different reasons why. Maybe they passed away. Maybe that, you know, it was a beginning quilt and they brought it to the quilting bee and they're like, no, we're not doing this one yet because it has all these little mounds in it and it's, you know, a little bit wonky. So there's plenty of reasons why quilts didn't get finished, or like you said, if you're gonna, there's nothing wrong with finishing those quilts, right? Because right now they're just sitting in a cover and not being worn and loved. So just know that if you alter an antique, you have just taken it from 1854 and you have made it 2023. And some people that really bothers, but it's your quilt. You do what you want. You own it. All right, look at this great design, right? The quilting on here is an exceptional. You'll see some double feathers on here, all done by hand. And remember, I mean, a lot of these seem to be applique quilts. Red and green quilts seem to be predominantly applique quilts back in the day. But you're going to see lots of different quilting, tons of quilting or not. It depends on the maker. It depends on their style. It depends on where they were in their journey. I love the quilts that are quilted to death, right? That are just like, oh, it's winter and I don't have nothing else to sew right now, so I'm just going to keep quilting. And they just quilted the heck out of it. But isn't these beautiful? I'm hoping you can see them well. This one has some weird black things in that fabric and I don't really know what it is. I don't know if it's like something foreign got on it at one time and then it's just turned into this blackish stuff on there, but there's a little bit of that on there. All right, how fun is this? Talk about repetition. All right, and then to make it fun, they just turned them. All right, some were going this way, some are going that way. Beautiful paisley here. I believe these are two different. I think this is a print and this is a different print. But again and again and again and again, making that same block. This is a big one. Uh-oh. I don't know anybody from Cleveland, Ohio.
Everyone knows you.
Spam. Spam. All right. Now look at this beauty. All right. Beautifully done. What is this quilt missing? Quilting. So it's very, very sparsely quilted. Hardly any around the appliques and in here. So maybe this wasn't a very prolific hand quilter and she just wanted it done, or maybe it was a wedding gift and maybe they didn't deserve all that fancy hand quilting. Who knows? I have some really fun stories, but I'm going to behave today. All right, look at this beautiful one. Solids. It's got some breakage in some of the in the red, but look at the cheddar. We're all enamored with cheddar even this day. So beautiful, beautiful applique. Everything is applique except for this piece sashing.
Does the other side have this big gap too?
Did the other side have what big gap? Well, look at
Lower.
Evelyn.
Oh.
Huyck. And this was Museum of American Folk Art, New York, New York. So it was documented between 1988 and 1991, and it has a date of 5/20/89 that it must have went into the museum. So there's this little tag on here from the museum. But, so this is one of those questions, like if you wanted to use this quilt, look at the binding, it's barely hanging on. It's not there. So could you cut this and do it? Yeah, but look what we got here. Look at how if we cut this off, we're gonna cut into those appliques. So this might be one of them that you just leave it and you just enjoy it. And maybe you hang it over a ladder or, you know, but there's nothing to say that this has to be kept in a closet or a cabinet all the time. You can still get these quilts out and use them. So a lot of applique quilts came from New York and the East Coast. That's where all the rich ladies lived, because these, to have that much fabric back at that time, you had some money, all right? And you'll see quilts without borders a lot of times, and you'll see other things like that, and maybe they're just working with scraps or what they got left over from clothing. But when you see a lot of these quilts from the East Coast, those ladies, that's where the rich ladies lived. All right, anybody recognize this quilt? How many times have you seen this quilt? This was a kid quilt back in the 50s. And you'll see these various ones all around. I bought this in Paducah, Kentucky one time there. So I know that, and it was a kit. It came with the quilting lines all marked on it and everything. So a collection of Kitty Clark Cole. She didn't make it, but she bought it, and then somehow it ended up Lisa Bongean's collection. We don't know how, but that's how. This is a sweet, sweet, sweet flower, isn't it? Look at that sashing. You know what these are? Me trying to keep track of my stuff. All right, so how spectacular is this? It's great. Yep, so see the blue coming through? Like, I don't know if it gets wet if it does that. I have no idea how that happens. Little patch here. Beautiful, beautiful diamond quilting out in the border. They did like a circle and some leaves in the inside here, but all the blocks, and then even the setting big triangles have them in as well.
How often do you find quilts that have been signed?
That have what?
Been signed?
Oh, they're pretty rare. They're pretty rare that you'll see them signed. And then, you know, you'll have a quilt for a long time and you don't even realize that there is a signature. You have to really put them out flat and really look over the whole quilt for a long time, and then you will see a lot of that stuff. And who knows, you know, you might, like I said, you might even miss it for years. All right, look at this baby. All right, super sweet, super easy. I mean, I can look at this and say, yes, this needs to be done. And we're not all hand appliqueurs anymore, but it would be great in wool too, even though it's simple. Sometimes these sweet, simple designs are wonderful, especially for beginners. This would give somebody a really good intro into making a quilt with wool appliques. Anybody know why I do wool appliques a lot? Anybody know? Come on. You know why. It's easier, right? Everybody can fuse something down and stitch around it. It takes a little bit more patience to needle turn all these, right? And that takes a little bit more skill. But I don't want people to be like, oh, I can't applique, right? You can applique. You just got to want to. And we might have to change the medium. And that's why I use wool, because we can fuse it down, but there's nothing wrong with using flannel or using cotton, fusing it down and hand blanking stitching it too. It does not have to be wool. I have used my flannels like they were wool as well, because you'll see some quilts where they do hand blanket stitching on regular cotton, right? A lot of the 30s quilts had a lot of blanket stitching on. Here's a sweet little block as well. Look at that big, bold border. Isn't that awesome? With some reverse heart appliques in the middle. So you know what reverse is, right? There's a little piece of red fabric underneath there, and she just turned that under to expose that heart instead of putting the heart on top. So that's called reverse applique. So if you see any thing like signage or anything, you just point it out. This one's beautiful. See, we don't have any staining on this one. Not too much anyways. Okay, so far they've been all applique quilts, haven't they? Okay, so across tulips. And do we have a border on your side? So look, 3 borders, not 4. So this would be probably the top by the pillows. That's usually what they did. Why did they only do 3? Maybe they didn't need the 4th one and you're not going to see it because it's under the pillows. Maybe they ran out of fabric. Who knows, right? Look at some of this. I don't know if this is supposed to be a repair. It's supposed to be somebody stuck that in there as a repair, but it's not the right color. But so they're trying to preserve that. So see how they did some stitches over the top of where it shattered a little bit in some of that. Maybe that's where the dog jumped on it or something. But look at this. So it's just a bunch of hand tacked stitches trying to keep that shape intact. And the green has faded green binding out to blue. Again, 2 different dye lots. One was stable, one was not. All right, here is some hand blanket stitching. It looks like reverse, so it looks like they switched it. Instead of putting the edge on the outside edge and going in, they did it opposite and pulled it out. And who knows what this was. All right. So just the thread on that one looks like it just disintegrated right away. Super fun, well loved. Somebody used this quilt a lot. And we all like to see that, right? This is super soft too, like it almost feels like, I don't know, like bamboo fabric or something, you know, or bamboo cotton. It's so soft, but it must have been washed a million times. Here's a pieced one. It's a little bit off color. It looks like it's kind of fading to an orange or like a more of a madder red than a true red. But we all know how she did this, right? By hand. This would be hard to piece nowadays. Instead of doing these diamonds, we're going to be doing half square triangles and then refiguring it in order to piece this by machine. But this was made all by hand stitching, hand quilting, hand stitch the binding on. By hand too. No machine on this quilt at all.
Is there any way to get those stains off?
I don't know. Maybe. Maybe some granny soak or that vintage stuff would take it off. I'm probably not going to do it. Lovely. What's that?
How many quilts do you
I don't know. I'm trying to keep track. Oh, please. If it was about what my husband could say, he could tell me or tell me not to do, we wouldn't be sitting in this building. Okay? All right? And I think Nick knew right away that he just better let me do what I want to do. Or he probably wouldn't be around yet today. So he's a smart guy. And if you don't know Nick, he's running around here. But one of the girls borrowed my Bernina this week. And I said, this is the machine that Nick bought me before we were even married. So I had to marry him. After you buy, I was sewing on a Sears Kenmore that I had to pay on layaway for $400. And then this guy buys me a $2,000 sewing machine that I would never have been able to afford. So I guess he's been rewarded, right? So if you encourage somebody, that could come back to help you. So I always preach to husbands, I'm like, you don't know what could happen with that woman and her sewing machine. So that little saying, never underestimate a woman and her sewing machine, there's some truth to that, right? All right, so here we go. Another sweet, sweet applique block that would look beautifully recreated. Simple border. Look I love the difference between the red and green leaves. That's very creative to bring the red back out in the leaves. So it's so fun to see how creative they were back then, because they didn't have, Pinterest and Etsy and Facebook for all the inspiration that we have today and how spoiled we are. Do you remember when the highlight of your month was going to your guild meeting? Because that's the only time you got inspiration. I remember that, All right, Look at how fun this yellow is. Again, almost all these quilts, I'm going to say, are, late 1800s, early 19th century, that time period. But big, bold, beautiful pattern here.
Can I ask what the most you spent on an antique quilt?
$5,000. There's this thing called layaway that the antique dealers were like, oh, you can just put that in the layaway closet. And I'm like, paying $500 a month for, 10 months till I get it? So then I got to go on a quilt diet and not buy anything for 10 months, because that's about the quota, right? You just can't have everything all at the same time, but sometimes. So when I would go to a show, I'd be like, okay, which one am I taking home with me? Because you guys are buying kits and patterns at the quilt show, and I'm looking for the antique quilt that I want to take home as my reward for doing this show. All right, so beautiful, beautiful. Is this a peony, or what do we call this one? Yeah. Carolina lily is that. So this is peony, I think, a peony piece block. Beautiful, beautiful quilting on this one. 2 different fabrics, again. The setting is a different, so they got all the blocks done and then like, oh crap, different dye lot. That happens, right? But is it any less beautiful? No. So just kind of be aware that, if you cut your border wrong and you have to piece it, it's okay. Put it on the darn quilt. We look for those things when in our antique quilts. We look for the three patches that make one patch. We think it's awesome. All right, John, R-A-I-L-E, 1869 or 4. I think it's a 9. March. So it's a wedding quilt. Annie. So they got married in March of 1869, John and Annie's quilt. Isn't that beautiful? Wonder how many babies were made under this. I don't call it a baby maker because it's pretty light, but maybe they lived in Florida or someplace, I don't know. Not very heavy one in this one. All right. I haven't seen some of these quilts for a while, so this is nice to visit them. This is a huge quilt. This is probably one of them that hit the floor on the full-size bed, because that's what they had back then, right? They weren't big people. They didn't have big beds, but this one probably went all the way down. Look at the intricacy of that. Is that 60 degree? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 60 degree diamond. And then this is diamonds flipped to make that awesome border. Again, we have some shattering in this fabric, but not in, shattering in that one too. It's hard to tell sometimes. It looks normal and it looks white, but it's really batting that you're seeing. Look at that tiny, tiny binding. Can you imagine sewing a binding on by hand?
There's an S on this.
Oh, see, she put her initial on it. We got an S. Ooh, look at the quilting. Hello, bye-bye. Safe travels home. She's going home to California. On the diagonal. Isn't that interesting? So this, I would call this like that pomegranate shape again. A little bit different executed. This is fading to yellow in spots from wear. But this one, again, was worn and loved. This one was washed a lot. All right, let's see what we got. Okay. This one says, this quilt was made in 1855 by the wife of Dr. I told you they had money. Dr. Glenn, a physician in Declo County, Indiana, given to me by her great-granddaughter, now living Aunt Gertie, Esther, Indiana. And then it says Georgia Morton, 1974. So it's kind of broken up. I can't really tell what some of that says. But It's something, right? We got kind of an idea. We know she was the wife of a physician. Getting down there. Big, 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 beautiful, bold blocks. So we have, what do we have here? This is kind of weird, right? Because we have 2 and 1, and then 2 and 1, and then 2 and 1. So, I guess, toot, toot, she put them where she wanted. She probably made 1 extra of this instead of making 4 of that. She lost track of where she was. But look at these funny shapes. I don't really even know what this is. Is it 2 birds and their feathers and then a heart in the middle? I don't know. Very folk art, primitive, big. And look at, she put a cheddar binding on there. No cheddar in the whole quilt, but the binding. See, there's fun quilting going on in here. Look at all that. Orientation. Which way do we orientate our blocks? 3 going that way, 2 rows going that way. You don't know, right? So how do you put it on the bed? Do you go sideways? Doesn't matter. It's still beautiful, right? Just simple cross hatching in the quilting. Hand-pieced hourglasses. No, they're not hourglasses. It's a square with triangles on each side. This one's in pretty good shape. Remember, these were made in the 1800s. Look at the work on these. How many of you would even try this today? Right? So you have to be like, honor her, like, but look at the fun, whimsical outside border. Just beautiful. Simple quilting on it, nothing fancy, just cross-hatched lines. She's letting her mastery of this star be the showcase. She didn't want any quilting competing with how awesome she can hand piece a star. See the stories I make up? All right, more flowers. 3 borders. Super cute, right? Sashing with a little bloom in there, a mini bloom. So she's got little itty bitty buds here, a little bit bigger bloom in the squares. Super cute. Simple quilting, all straight lines, nothing fancy, but look at it on the back side. Getting down there, getting down there. 1, 2, 3. Again, look at the workmanship. This one is quilted to death. Should we do this with half square triangles? I'm not piecing diamonds, but it's so gorgeous. Gorgeous. Yeah, and you gotta wonder, like, what is that? This one would probably be, I would probably try to remove that because this quilt is exceptional. Right, so here's this, again, this beautiful, beautiful small cross stitch. So, I don't know what it says. What do you think that says?
It says Margaret C. Roberts, her
Her
quilt,
quilt,
done March the
9th
or 7th, 1849.
1848. 1848. That's when Wisconsin became a state, people. All right? Isn't that gorgeous? But it's the tiniest, tiniest cross stitch. Beautiful. Did it say where she was from?
Didn't. It just says when she did it.
No, it just says the year, not where she was from. So when I see a quilt and I can't forget about it, that's when I know I gotta buy it. So I'll walk away And if I get distracted by something else and I forget about it, then I didn't need it. But if I can't stop thinking about it, then I go back and buy it. Simple. I think these were like almost like rooster. They had some dimension to them at some point. Like they were folded or gathered or something. I don't know what you want to call that.
Well, this one looks gathered.
Right. This could be one that I might consider making a coat out of. Right? Because look at how damaged it is. Right? So it's not one you're going to use on a bed. Yeah, it looks great in a cupboard, but how awesome would it be as a coat?
What does the tag say? It's just a number for these.
Yeah, that's just my
System.
our attempt of figuring out what we got. Wow, look at this one. This one was stored in a cabinet and never seen the light of day, don't you think? Look at how perfect that is. That cheddar is very vibrant. There's only a little bit of shattering in these reds, very few compared to the other ones. But this one I think was kept, but I may be wrong because look at that binding. It's worn. So it is gone. So this is not, but this is. You see that? All right. Hand-pieced scallops. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So let's give a round to those who came before us and made these beautiful quilts. This was a top at one time. Look at the workmanship in this top. How could I not make that into a quilt? So we quilted it in a Baptist fan, but now it's a quilt, and now it can be displayed and used. As a quilt top, you can't use it or display it. But now it's not 1870 anymore. Now it's probably 2020 when we did that to it. But you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, right? So it's my quilt. I can do whatever I want. Anybody want to figure out how to piece that? This woman was brilliant. That is amazing. I don't even know how I would start dissecting that. So if you know anybody who's an expert, let's figure that out. I'm sure you could template it out, all right? But I'm sure that's not how she did it. So it's pretty amazing. Maybe somebody wants to volunteer to make one of these blocks. See me later. All right, so that's our bed turning for you today. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for participating in our event. This is our biggest event of the year. I love Christmas. I love giving you things. And that's why I think my staff loves giving you things, because they kept, hey, can we give this away free? Hey, I made this. Yes, 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 yes to all. So please enjoy yourself here today. Have fun, because we decide how much fun we're going to have every day. All right, so let's spread the love. Let's connect with each other. Let's make those friendships last. And that's why this place is here. All right, I want to build a place where we all can come together, hang out, belly laugh until 1:30 in the morning, whatever it takes. You don't forget those things, and that's what makes life special, is the people and what we can create and what's going to outlive us. And this is a perfect example of what's going to be here long after we're gone. So think about that when you are making things. They're going to be here.